Welcome to the debate. Today, we are tackling probably the single biggest anxiety in the gym. It's that nagging voice in the back of your head when you step onto a treadmill that just whispers, you are killing your gains. We are talking about concurrent training, the act of combining resistance training and endurance training, within the same program. And specifically, we are dissecting the chronic interference hypothesis.
It is, yeah. It's the classic identity crisis of the modern athlete. We all want the heart of a marathon runner and the biceps of a bodybuilder. But the central question is whether biology actually allows for that, or if asking your body to be an endurance engine and a force-generating hydraulic press at the same time is, well, simply asking for failure.
Right. And my position is that for the vast majority of people listening to this, that fear is completely unfounded. I am here to argue that cardio kills gains is a myth born from bad science and, frankly, extreme data points. The data actually suggests that aerobic work can support hypertrophy, improve your recovery, and under the right conditions, maybe even help you build more muscle, not less.
And I come at it from a different angle. I am here to be the bearer of bad news for the generalists. I am arguing that the interference effect is very real. It might not steal your size immediately, but it absolutely steals your function. If you care about explosive power, maximal strength, and athletic performance, cardio acts as a ceiling on your potential. You can be big or you can be fast and strong, but at the elite level, you cannot be both.
A bold claim. Let's get into the weeds. I want to start by dismantling the molecular argument because this is really where the fear started. For years, the prevailing theory was this AMPK versus mTOR conflict.
Which is a valid physiological conflict.
In a petri dish, maybe. For the listeners, let's just clarify these terms. mTOR is the molecular switch that tells your muscles to grow. It is the build signal, essentially. AMPK is the switch triggered by endurance exercise. It regulates energy and efficiency. So the old theory was that AMPK shuts off mTOR. If you run, you flip the energy switch and it inevitably turns off the build switch.
Well, it's not just a theory, it's a mechanism. The body prioritizes energy survival over building, expensive muscle tissue. If you are running, your body perceives an energy crisis. It activates AMPK to conserve fuel, which theoretically inhibits the growth pathway.
But that binary view is, it's outdated. We need to look at the D'Souza meta-analysis and the consensus that has emerged recently. When they looked at actual human beings, not just isolated rat cells, they found that even when AMPK was elevated by cardio, the muscle still grew. The strength training signal, that mechanical tension under the bar, is just so loud that it overrides the endurance signal. In the D'Souza findings, the group doing both cardio and lifting saw the same growth in cross-sectional area, about 6 to 8%, as the group that only lifted. The muscle didn't care about the cardio. It grew anyway.
Okay, I see why you rely on that data, but let me give you a different perspective. You are hanging your hat on cross-sectional area, essentially just the size of the muscle. And I will grant you that. If you just want to fill out a t-shirt, concurrent training is fine. But muscles aren't just for show, they are for go.
Meaning?
Meaning the quality of that tissue changes. I want to bring up the Gomes study published in the Journal of Sports Sciences in 2025. This is critical because they used trained males. Novices can do anything and grow. These guys, they knew what they were doing.
A crucial distinction. Yeah, the newbie gains phase can mask a lot of bad programming.
Exactly. So let's walk through the Gomes data. They tracked something called the load velocity profile. Essentially, they measured how fast these athletes could move a heavy weight. In phase 1 of the study, everyone got stronger. But in phase 2, when they shifted the program to focus on power explosiveness, the concurrent group hit a hard wall. Their 1-rep max, their absolute ceiling of strength, it just plateaued.
They plateaued, but did they regress?
In the world of performance, stagnation is failure. The group that only lifted weights kept adding weight to the bar, another 6.5% increase in maximal strength. The concurrent group plateaued because the cardio was introducing a competing signal. It blunted their ability to generate maximum force. If you are an athlete or even just someone trying to hit a PR on your deadlift, that plateau is the difference between success and failure.
That is an interesting point, though. I would frame it a little differently. I think you are interpreting that plateau as a biological heart stop. whereas I see it as a nuance of programming. Let's look closer at that same Gomez study. You mentioned power. In phase 2, the concurrent group actually did catch up in the counter movement jump height.
The jump is an unloaded movement, though. It involves moving just your body weight.
But it's a pure expression of explosiveness. If the cardio has destroyed their fast twitch capability or ruined their nervous system, they shouldn't be able to jump as high. But they could. This tells me that the interference isn't systemic, it's manageable. The fact that they maintained jump height suggests that their nervous system could still fire rapidly, even with the endurance training.
I'm not convinced by that, because you are cherry-picking the one metric where they survived. Look at the A-line data from that study, the area under the curve for force and velocity. When they tried to move heavy loads fast, not just their body weight, they failed to improve. This is what we call velocity-specific interference. Cardio makes you slow. It teaches your body to be efficient, which is the opposite of being inefficient and explosive. You are confusing the muscle's identity.
Confusing the identity. That implies the body is stupid. I would argue the body is highly adaptable. And actually, I want to pivot to a point that contradicts your entire cardio is the enemy stance. There is evidence that for some people, cardio is actually anabolic. It directly builds muscle.
I assume you are referencing the Harbor Review.
I am. Harper and colleagues found that in sedentary and older populations, aerobic exercise alone, we are talking strictly cycling at 80% of their heart rate reserve, caused significant hypertrophy. They saw a 7% increase in quadriceps volume without touching a weight.
Wait, hold on. Context is everything here. You just said sedentary and older.
The mechanism implies potential for everyone, though. Think about it. If you cycle for 45 minutes, you are performing thousands of concentric contractions. Even if the load is low, say 30% of your max, that massive volume accumulates mechanical tension. It is the same principle as doing sets of 50 reps in the gym. It proves that the aerobic pathway isn't inherently catabolic. Under the right conditions, it is a growth stimulus.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. For the listener who is serious about the gym. For a grandmother coming off bed rest, sure, walking to the mailbox is a growth stimulus for someone who hasn't moved in a year. But we have to be honest with our audience. If you are squatting double your body weight, riding a bike isn't going to build your quads. You have already adapted past that threshold.
True, you won't get huge legs just from cycling if you are already strong. But it disproves the idea that cardio eats muscle. And more importantly, that aerobic base improves your capillary density.
Which helps with what, exactly, in the context of lifting heavy iron?
Recovery. Capillaries are the roads that deliver nutrients and oxygen to the muscle. More roads mean better delivery and better waste removal. If you have a better aerobic engine, you clear metabolic waste faster between sets of squats. You can handle more volume in your lifting sessions because you recover faster. In that sense, cardio isn't the enemy of lifting. It is the support system that allows you to lift more.
I agree with the recovery aspect, in theory, but we have to discuss the cost. Everything has a biological cost. You mentioned fiber type implicitly earlier. We have type 1 fibers, which are slow and built for endurance, and type 2 fibers, which are fast and built for power.
The classic distinction.
Heavy lifting requires type 2 fibers. Endurance training specifically targets type 1. If you do too much cardio, you risk what is called fiber type conversion, or at least a shift in characteristics. You are training your Ferrari engine to act like a Prius hybrid. It becomes more fuel efficient, yes, but it loses top speed. That aligns perfectly with the Gomez data. The size remained, which is likely type 1 hypertrophy, but the explosive power against heavy loads, the type 2 job, suffered.
That is a valid theoretical concern for an Olympian. But practically, for the guy listening who wants to look good at the beach and be healthy, it doesn't matter. And frankly, the cost you mentioned can be mitigated almost entirely by how you schedule your day. The interference effect isn't some ghost you can't see. It is usually just bad timing.
You are talking about the interference gap.
Exactly. The literature is robust here. The molecular switch we talked about, AMPK, returns to baseline relatively quickly. The recommendation is a gap of at least 4 to 6 hours between sessions.
So run in the morning, lift at night.
Yes. If you separate the sessions, the interference signal is gone by the time you touch the barbell. the molecular conflict is nullified.
Theoretically nullified. But you are ignoring the elephant in the room. Fatigue.
Go on.
You can separate the sessions by 6 hours. You can separate them by 12. But if you ran 5 miles this morning, you depleted your glycogen stores, the fuel inside the muscle. You come into the gym at 6 p.m. to squat. Your AMPK might be low, but your gas tank is half empty. You cannot express your true strength potential if you are metabolically drained. You aren't missing the lift because of a molecular switch. You're missing it because you're tired.
That sounds like a nutrition problem, not a training problem.
It is both.
But it is solvable. Most people who lose muscle or strength while doing cardio are simply in a caloric deficit. Cardio burns a lot of calories. As one of our sources noted, muscle loss is often just a caloric deficit in disguise. If you eat enough protein, aiming for that 2 grams per kilogram mark, and you aggressively replace those carbohydrates to refill the glycogen, the fatigue factor drops significantly.
Nutrition helps, I won't deny that, but you cannot eat your way out of central nervous system fatigue. And this brings us to the modality. If you were going to do this, if you insist on concurrent training, you have to choose the right tool. The Journal of Sports Sciences was clear. Running is worse than cycling.
I agree there. Running has a high eccentric component.
Right. Every time your foot hits the pavement, your muscle has to lengthen under tension to absorb the shock. That causes actual micro-tearing of the muscle fibers. Cycling effectively has zero eccentric loading. It is concentric only, just the push. If you run, you are going into your lifting session with actual muscle damage. If you cycle, you are mostly dealing with metabolic fatigue.
That is a crucial distinction for the listeners. If you want to save your gains, get off the treadmill and get on the bike. Or the elliptical, anything with low impact.
And keep the intensity down. The Zone 2 argument is the only safety valve here. Low intensity, steady state, LISS. If you start doing high-intensity intervals, sprints, you are tapping into the exact same high-threshold motor units you need for lifting. That is a direct conflict. If you keep it at 70% of your heart rate, you might just slide under the radar.
I think we are finding some common ground here. Zone 2 cycling, separated by a few hours, with plenty of food. That seems to be the formula. It allows you to maintain the molecular signaling for growth while getting the heart health benefits.
It is a mitigation strategy, but I still maintain my position regarding the ceiling. In the Gomes study, even the group that did everything right still plateaued on their max strength. The resistance-only group kept climbing. For the listener who is obsessed with their numbers, the powerlifter, the weightlifter, concurrent training is a leak in your hull. You might be able to patch it, but you are still taking on water.
But for the listener who wants to live to be 90, the listener who wants to hike up a mountain without wheezing, that leak is worth it. The health benefits of aerobic fitness, insulin sensitivity, heart health, lower inflammation, create a better environment for the muscle to exist in long term. Even the D'Souza study noted that aerobic training reduced catabolic factors like myostatin. It literally turns down the muscle wasting signal.
Health is a different conversation than performance. I am talking about optimization. You cannot optimize two opposing systems. When you look at the best athletes in the world, they specialize.
I think we can optimize for the hybrid athlete, though. We see CrossFitters and High Rocks competitors doing incredible things. They are the proof of concept that the body can handle both.
They are masters of the middle ground. But notice, the world's best CrossFitter will never out-squat the world's best powerlifter, and he will never outrun the world's best marathoner. The interference effect ensures that. You are choosing to be good at everything rather than great at one thing.
And I would argue that being good at everything is the definition of a capable human being. The interference is negligible for anyone not collecting a gold medal.
Perhaps. But I want the listeners to understand the trade-off. It isn't free. If you add 3 hours of cardio a week, that is energy and recovery capacity taken away from your lifting.
Fair enough. Let's try to synthesize this into a final takeaway for the audience. My conclusion is that the fear of cardio is vastly overblown. The 2022 meta-analysis and the molecular data from D'Souza show us that muscle hypertrophy is highly resilient. You can run, or preferably cycle, and still build big muscles. The interference effect on size is a myth for the vast majority. If you eat enough food to cover the burn and you try to separate your sessions to let the signals clear, you get the best of both worlds, health and hypertrophy.
And my conclusion is that while you might keep your size, you are gambling with your performance. The 2025 Gomes study is a warning shot for the advanced trainee. If you care about how much weight you can put on the bar or how fast you can move it, cardio creates a ceiling. It introduces neural noise and competes for energy resources. If your goal is to be the strongest version of yourself, you need to minimize the interference. Walk the dog? Sure. But don't train for a 10K while trying to hit a 500-pound squat.
So it ultimately comes down to training status and goals.
Exactly. Are you trained or untrained? And do you want to look big or do you want to be explosive?
And we didn't even have time to touch on upper body versus lower body interference.
That is true. The interference is likely localized. Your bench press probably doesn't care if you ride a stationary bike. It is the legs that suffer the double duty.
A topic for the next deep dive. Thank you for joining us on The Debate. We hope this clears up the confusion for your next session, whether you're hitting the iron or the pavement.
Choose your sacrifice.
Goodbye.